skin, so gorgeous. We thank the life gorgeous. Thank the life gorgeous. I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Life Gorgeous. My name is Craig Kilborn. This is where I share my magical life in hopes of improving your life. And a very special episode this week. Some of you have heard me talk about my happy childhood ad nauseum. It's kind of suffocating. But I did grow up in Hastings, Minnesota. I moved there from New Jersey. I was born in Kansas City. Then we went to New Jersey, then kindergarten through high school, Hastings, Minnesota. And today I am catching up with a childhood friend from Hastings, Minnesota. We did comedy together in the tape recorder. His name growing up is Greg Malbin. His radio DJ name is Greg Thunder, and he's been very successful working morning DJ across the United States of America. Please welcome Greg Thunder, my childhood friend.
Hi, Craig. This is such a thrill. This is almost surreal,
Right.
and it might be for you too. It's just this is just a real pleasure, and I've got a lot to. I've been kind of racking my brain as I kind of reconnected. We've stayed in touch over the last 40 some years, and
But
not as much as we have. Infrequently.
Yes. Yeah. And I want, before we go Hastings childhood, I talked to you on the phone the other day, first time in maybe 20 years. And I said, you gave me the rundown of the markets you worked at. You're a successful radio DJ. I think you said 43 years.
I think I'm in my 43rd year, and
Wow.
And you're not that far behind me, but not the kind of success as my.
Stop that. I mean, we're going to talk about that for 20 minutes if you're proud of me, but we're not doing that now. So what was the first radio market you worked in?
Okay, so I went to KFOR Lincoln, which was I was 21 years old. And I had gone to broadcast school, and listen, nobody wants to hear these old radio stories, but I went to Lincoln, Nebraska, and then got to New York City at a couple of radio stations.
Now that had to be huge. That's the number one market.
Number one market. And I did nights at a station called Hot 97, which is very hip hop now. It wasn't at the time, and worked at a station called WPLJ. And I go by Greg Thunder. On the air, and I have for quite some time. So it pays better.
We used to call you affectionately Malbs because your last name was Malbin.
Right. I didn't have a great radio name like Kilborn. And Thunder just happens to pay a lot better than Malbin did. I realized. So, but anyway, it is great to be here. This is just so great. I hope we have all the time in the world.
I know you have a heart out because you have to take your wife out to dinner because she kind of bears the pants in that family. But where else did you go? You rattled off. You were in Seattle. You were in Denver. You were
Chicago for a short time. Washington D.C., Houston, Texas, but I'm being from Minnesota. You and your brother left, and I always wanted to come back, and I have come back a couple of times. Left a couple of times for some opportunities, but I've been back now for 7 years in Minneapolis. So I'm on the swan song of the career.
And so it's morning FM. It's a music stuff, right?
Yeah, mostly it's country. I'm doing country now, but I've done everything from, top 40 and other stuff too. And
do you have a musical preference in your personal life? Are you like you a fan of Gene Simmons and Kiss? I think maybe I remember that from when I was younger.
I'm not so much of a Kiss man. I'll tell you this, and maybe you can speak to this too, but doing morning radio around music, the last thing I want to do is listen to music when I get in the car, and most of the stuff I do is between the songs, between the records, and so we don't get a chance to listen to a lot of it. But the last thing I want to do is listen to a lot of radio. I'd
Right.
rather be entertained and laugh. And so my wife and I watch a lot of, we stream a lot of stuff. So
Right. If you traveled that much from market to market, that means to me that you love broadcasting.
it pays, as you and I think both know, we don't know what else to do. And if we had to do something else, we wouldn't be very good at it.
Right.
So, and as you also know, it becomes a job like anything else, but it is a love. It's a labor of love. And I'm sure, I hope we get a chance to talk about your basketball upbringing. And
Right.
I swam when I was a kid. I was not
Exactly.
as good of I was nowhere near as good of a swimmer as you were a basketball player. But I think you'd agree that that as much work as we put into swimming and basketball, that the work we put in helped us in our careers, but also our careers came easier, I think, because of the work we did.
Yeah.
In our childhood sports.
Yeah, I remember when I play. I tell people my whole childhood was comedy and basketball, and I knew in the summer that's when you make the leap each year in basketball is you have to work on your jump shot, your left hand, your dribbling, all this stuff. So I worked really hard, and I did work hard in broadcasting. And the fact that I was at ESPN doing a 2 a.m. live sports center, which was 11 p.m. on the West Coast, 2 a.m. on the East Coast. I'd get to bed at 4 or 5. Oh my Lord. But,
and you'd be wired. And so it'd be so hard to get to sleep.
This is pathetic. You're 100% right. I would do some jokes, like there was a basketball player named Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, and he was on the Denver Nuggets, and they would win a game, and I would do highlights, and I go, Rauf is on fire. We don't give a damn. Let the LA Clippers burn as he scored 40 and the Nuggets beat the Clippers. Yeah. And I was, I got to see this. My dad's going to see it soon in a few hours in Arizona, and I'm going to stay up. I'm not going to bed at 4. It starts at 6 a.m. And then I'll go get some breakfast. Oh my God. So it was unhealthy, Malbs. I mean, it was not.
I need to know, and I'm sure you've talked about this before. How proud was your mom and dad? Did they watch every night?
Okay. My dad has a hell of a sense of humor, and they passed in the last year, both of them. My mom was 88. My dad was 87. I was very close with my parents. My dad was very funny, but I did my first sports center. And I always tell people you can't control the way you look. So I'm this blonde, blue-eyed guy that, Letterman called a pretty boy. And I look the way I look, like angelic. I can't help it. So my whole thing was, don't be too demonstrative and animated on camera, but over the highlights, go crazy, man. Yeah. Steve Kerr, fundamentally sound. I would yell all this stuff. But I did my first sports center, and I called my dad. To immediately. It was live.
And you're looking for validation here.
Yes. This is how he answers the phone. Smith's residence. I'm changing if you either you change your name or I'll change my name. And then he said a few years later when I was progressing, he goes, if people ask about the parents, just say your parents have passed away. Just say they're dead. Okay. We don't want. His joke was children were put on this earth to, embarrass, let down, to disappoint parents. Mm-hmm, That's what children, to disappoint their parents. But obviously he was very proud of me, but he had a different way of saying, I love you by good-natured ribbing, we like to call it.
Yeah. Well, I know how proud they were. And they were a delight. Your father and my father, although we weren't, your mother and my mother, they did the same thing. Professionally, they did the same thing. They taught
they were
kids
teachers
with learning disabilities.
Learning disabilities,
yeah. And but they didn't hang out socially. But your father had a very dry sense of humor, and so did mine. And so we can appreciate. I don't know about you, but I never felt like I had to earn that that love or respect from my father. We were very blessed to have great parents, and parents who were fun and supportive in their own way. But I remember your parents really well, and your mom was hot, by the way. Your mom, I mean, I was 12, and your mom was very attractive.
I mean, I'm not offended. I'm happy to hear that because my father, more jokes about my dad. He used to say, "You boys will never come home with anyone as beautiful as your mother." Like he would say that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I was doing Dan Barrero's show. I do locally in Minneapolis, and I was telling a story about my folks, and I described my mom. And I'm trying to remember. I think I said something like a cross between Mary Tyler Moore and Suzanne
Mhm.
Plachette,
Yes,
something like that.
exactly.
And
Mhm.
Barrero's like, "Oh, that's a good mix. That sounds pretty good." You know? But no, she was 5'9", and then she was a slender, beautiful woman, and very nice and very patient.
Yes.
And I plan on writing a book and telling stories about the things my parents did because they did a lot of stuff. I wanted a weight jacket. I wanted to improve my
You wore it.
leaping.
You wore it every day,
Yeah,
all summer long for
see, I'm
summers
glad you
on
remember
end.
that. I'm trying to improve my vertical leap. And so you could wear ankle weights or a weight vest. And I could order a weight vest. And my dad says, no, 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 no. We're not paying for that. So my mom sewed me one and put sand in there in these little
Yeah.
pockets. She broke 3 sewing needles, but she worked really hard and
I remember
she loved Krager's.
it was off white burlappy, but
I
not
can't believe
burlap, but
so I yes,
canvasy. Yeah.
absolutely with
Yeah.
straps. Exactly. It was some kind
You
of
wore it everywhere.
thank you. Yeah.
No, I
Wore it
don't know
on
if it's a compliment, but
I no, I know. I was gonna say I wore it on dates, but I never went on a date in high school. I was I don't know. I guess it's the old late bloomer. But we'll talk about that off air. We'll talk about some of driving down to whatever spot it was. I don't even know what the spot was. So wait, so we're going right into Hastings. So were you born in Minnesota?
I was born in Topeka, Kansas, so you and I
Oh,
have that Kansas connection
oh, I didn't
as
know
well. Even
that.
though you were from New Jersey, but I knew you had via Kansas City,
Yeah.
and I think and I was friends, in Craig's brother Chris and I graduated together, but we were friends from I think if not grade school, junior high definitely,
Yeah,
and
I was wondering because there was a guy named Rich Franklin who I
mhm.
knew when we were in elementary school, but Rich moved away. And I'm not saying you're a replacement for Rich. I would never say that. But
Yeah, I remember the name, but
I think we started hanging out, the three of us, my brother Chris and you, and then myself. And my brother and I, you know how you go through stages? We always liked basketball, but then there were stages. And there was a stage where Chris and I, my brother, we were into 10-speed bicycles. And we studied them. And we had a book by Richard Ballantyne or whatever his name is. And we knew about center pole brakes and lugged frames and Shimano Eagles and Campagnola side poles and all these components, quick release hubs. And you had a Raleigh Grand Prix. Now, did you have a
so
Schwinn before that, a Schwinn Varsity, which was the heaviest bike in the world?
I so I went from what I recall, I went from the Stingray, which was the bike with the banana seat and the
Banana
sissy
seat.
bar and
Yeah,
the high rise handlebars.
right.
Basically the easy rider of
Yes.
Ninninger Road where I grew up.
You grew up on a
And
country road and you had to ride into town.
I had a
And
town to see
I
you.
thought it was dangerous. Did you ever get
We
hit by a car? And
we No, unbelievably no. And back then, in our childhood, you left in the summer. You left at sunup, and then you came back at sunset. And there were no cell phones, obviously, and you
right.
didn't call. And if you didn't show up till the next day, that's when your parents started to
Sure.
get worried.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
your bike was your freedom,
Yep.
and so I. I wanted this 10-speed bike, and I think it was because we had all started talking about
Right.
cycling, and I think it might have been we were young, but we would watch strange things on TV, like on ABC Wide World of Sports. This is all before computers and satellites and
Right.
cable. You had the radio and you had 4 broadcast TV
Correct. 4
channels.
networks. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we'd watch the Tour de France. I mean, crazy stuff and we'd have to wait till Saturday for Wide World of Sports to watch it.
Exactly.
and we I got my dad. I mowed the lawn. I got $225 for the front, $275 for the backyard, and it was
Wow,
a
that's a
good
lot.
size. It was
That's
a lot. It was
outrageous.
$5, and I saved it up.
Oh, I see.
Dad, I bought the first half of it anyway. Bought a Raleigh Grand Prix, which was a little over $100 back,
Yeah.
$117.
Those were nice. When you said $275, you're saying $2.75.
75 cents.
Yeah. Okay. Then
Yes.
total is $5. Okay.
Yes.
Right. I was like, that was outrageous.
I was not getting $500 to mow.
Right. But the Raleigh Grand Prix we knew was a top-notch 10
It was a good bike. For a kid,
it had a simplex derailleur.
Yes,
I'm just
it
remembering this stuff now. It's
Yes.
fun to remember these things. And we were into cycling because we saw it on television. So we thought, this is pretty cool. But the comedic Greg Thunder would do something that we laughed at. Do you remember what you used to do? You'd ride over to our house. We'd see you. Would be in the driveway playing hoops, and you'd come and you'd jump off your bike and let it sail along and crash into the yard somewhere. Do you remember that or not?
Now that I know the true value of money, I take much better care of things.
But you got to laugh. I would laugh.
Yes.
I think my brother
I did anything.
My brother would cringe, and I would laugh because he was so stuffy.
If I could get a joke. Chris was, you and I connected on a humor level. Chris was incredibly talented, a great athlete, brilliant, our valedictorian and
I introduced him as the lone valedictorian of a graduating class of 500, and he had the high school high jump record of 6'4" for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
The record now I think is 6'6" or 6'8". He sent me a list of he's still on the list. He sent me the list. He found it somewhere.
Still in the top 10?
Oh, yeah, top 5, yeah.
But with all those accolades and talents and abilities, he was the least funniest person I knew.
Well, he's funny now. He came out of his shell.
Really?
But he was very serious when he was younger.
Yes.
He was into science fiction.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Back. Absolutely.
That's why he tried. He saw the movie, The Time Machine, H.G. Wells.
Yes.
He saw that movie and he wanted to build a time machine.
Yes.
And you said, I'll give you $1 million if you build a time machine. And you guys wrote up a contract. You signed it, and he started trying to build a time machine in the basement.
And he's 12. And he's 12.
Oh my gosh. And he was putting he had the saucer. We had this this round sled for going down the hill in the snow, and that was part of the time machine. And then the weight set was part of the time machine.
Well, that was over by the cemetery where we'd slide down to Lake Rebecca, where just about every child got an arm or leg broke.
Right.
But the thing about jumping off my bike in your front yard, and I got to let you know this, that how serious Craig and Chris were about their basketball. I never was in their backyard because everything happened on the driveway, or if we went in either down in the basement or in the living room, that's where we were allowed. But most everything, we were kids that played outside.
Yep.
And mostly basketball. And I learned to I'm 6'3". I'm not as tall as Craig. Was 6'4", 6'2" and a half maybe now. But they taught me the sky hook. And so I could at least hang in there.
Right.
And I was more of a Kevin McHale. I could just, get in there and body block.
Right.
But the dichotomy of Chris and Craig laughing at anything knuckleheady,
right,
and Chris being like, why? Because he was so smart,
right?
Like, why would you do that? And Craig would be doubled over. The dichotomy of the audience I would play for because I would get both. I would get both sides, and it would be even funnier because of Chris's reaction.
Yes.
And I wouldn't, if it was just you and me, I wouldn't do it. But because I knew it bothered Chris so much, I would jump off the bike and then let it roll off. And this is a beautiful bicycle, and it just bothered Chris to no end.
Yeah, yeah. I think I may have told you this on the phone call, but Chris, he graduated from Rice University. He's a software engineer, and he went to Silicon Valley. And I was staying with him when I got out of college because I was trying to get a job broadcasting in California. But he got a letter from my mom, and she says, it's okay that you don't have a personality. Craig has a personality. You don't have a personality. It's okay. Like that's who you are. And we were laughing so hard. My mom was being
You were sleeping on his couch at the time. Was that when you were sleeping on his couch? Or?
Yeah, how'd you know? Did I tell you that? Yeah, I was sleeping. Yeah, I was sleeping on the couch.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. So
we were worried about you.
Let me ask you. We were talking comedy. What you and I used to do? Tell me if you remember this. We would watch Monty Python. We'd watch Saturday Night Live, not together. We would be at our house, and then you'd come over the next. But you'd come over the next day, and we'd play the tape recorder, and we'd talk about the jokes that we liked, and then we'd do our own little jokes and try to make each other laugh, and then we'd listen to it back, and we'd laugh at listening to it. So that's how we kind of honed some of our broadcasting and comedy skills. Correct?
We would yes. So we had this. We grew up in this time. David Letterman actually had a daytime show. I don't know if you remember. We came on in the morning.
Yep.
I think it only lasted a few months.
Right.
And it was so strange up against the game shows and everything. But it was David Letterman and his humor. But he came on at 9 o'clock, like 9
a.m.
Kelly and Ryan, or like The View, and he had guests, but his humor was not really
daytime
for anyone who was staying at home,
right?
And so we loved that. And it's the first time we'd ever seen Letterman, anything like Letterman.
Yeah,
our dads were kind of into Carson, but we loved to watch Carson if we could stay up that late. But also, for me, it was another show called Fernwood Tonight.
Oh, that was a big influence. So, because I would still do, I had, Martin Mull on my CBS late night show.
Mm-hmm.
I think he actually came to one of my parties at my house. I had Merv Griffin there. It was just a really fun party. But Martin Mull as Barth Gimble, and then Fred Willard as Jerry Hubbard.
Brilliant.
And then Happy Kine and the Mirth Makers.
Yeah.
And they had Miss Bun and Run on. And this was a local burger place I guess it was supposed to be Fernwood, Ohio, I think. And Jerry Hubbard, Fred Willard, was saying, "Oh, I'd like to catch up with her." He was doing all these really bad puns, and then Martin Mull was getting, "Come on, Jerry, knock that off." Okay, have it your way. All these kind of Burger King slogans and all these burger slogans. It was very funny. But yeah, don't you think that helped us in broadcasting to do the tape recorder?
Well, I absolutely do, and I've got so many questions for you, Craig. And I know that people aren't here to hear me or
go ahead.
But let me ask you this. I do want to ask you this. From all the people you've met, and you got to meet some of your childhood idols, like John Cleese.
Oh yes,
rather, yeah,
John Cleese, yeah.
And so, who was it that? I don't want to ask you who let you down, because that's always. You almost sometimes don't want to meet some of your childhood idols. Be careful.
That. Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for. And I don't. Yeah. I'm not gonna call you out and ask you who that is. But who is just the person that you grew up, you met, and it all followed through, and that relationship then went to a new level that surprised you, and that was somebody that was endearing. And
the guy that jumps out, usually people say, who's your favorite guest? Or they also say he was, to me, the funniest guy in the world, and is, but he was nice to me. And his name is Bill Murray. And when it started at ESPN, where I've told the story before, I'll make it quick, but there were a couple guys, Steve Levy and Carl Ravitch, who thought that Chevy Chase was funnier than Bill Murray. And then Dan Patrick, Keith Olbermann, and I were like, no, Bill's the funniest guy around. Trust us. And I told these guys that, and they didn't even know Nick Wings or Nick Rails, the character when the Bill would play on SNL. I think they just knew him as the groundskeeper in Caddyshack. So we do this little argument in the newsroom at ESPN, and then there's a phone call, because it turns out that at the time Dan Patrick would chat on occasion with Bill Murray. So Dan says, "Hey, Craig, phone call for you." Hands me the phone. And he goes, "Hello, Craig. It's Bill Murray. First, I want to say I think you're very funny. Secondly, thanks for sticking up for me."
Wow. That is, I mean.
Then he did The Daily Show. We did The Daily Show. And then he did my first show at CBS.
That's crazy.
And he had a
very gracious then.
Yeah, he has an 800 number.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you get a hold of him.
I've heard if you want to be in the movie, if you want him to be in your movie, I've heard that you call this number and he doesn't respond, and or you just show up at the airport and he's either there or he's not.
So I had to call him once. He had done my CBS show, and then the first show, and then I had to call him because of Charlie's Angels. He was in Charlie's Angels, and there was promotion for that. So I left a message, and then he called me back and left a message. "Watching your show, crowd's kind of loud, Craig. They're pretty crazy, aren't they?" Because it was a really small studio, and we'd whip them into a frenzy. The warm-up guy whip into a frenzy. "If I'm out there in LA, we'll catch some angel fever, Craig." He was doing all these jokes. Now, I don't think he came out for the promotion for Charlie's Angels, but yeah, he would be the guy that I met, and I just, I used to watch him when I was working in local TV in Monterey. He did Pebble Beach, the Pro-Am, and he was just. Right. He was joking all the time. Yeah, still does. Yeah. And he if he misses a putt, he blames it on the ocean. It's too loud. I mean, he does all these jokes. My
only interaction with him was he was partial owner of the St. Paul Saints.
That's right.
Yeah. And I was out there throwing out a first pitch, being a local celebrity, I guess. And he was there too, and he's standing right behind me, and I'm going to go out and throw out the first pitch, and we're waiting for all the announcements, and I've got the ball that I'm going to throw,
right?
And I don't want to bother him because he's not making a noise. He's not, he's just standing, and it's just the two of us. And I turn around, and I'm just like, and I should have said Bill, but I just said Mr. Murray. And I, like you, we watch him, we grew up with him,
right?
I just said, and I don't ask for autographs, but it's Bill Murray. And I go, "Would you please sign this for me?" And he just looks at me and he just shakes his head and he signs it, hands it back. And he's so quiet and so just in his own space. And he goes out and he is grabbing women out of the bleachers and just, I mean, he goes from just nothing to complete mayhem. Yeah. And, and he was very nice. I mean, he was very nice, but he wasn't not nice either. But I don't know what you're going to get with him. But I've had friends that have, they're also in the business that have interviewed him. He's been nothing but great today.
Yeah. He's, wait, you just reminded me of something. What did you just say? Oh, I know what it was. You just talked about local radio throwing out the first pitch. Did you have embarrassing experiences doing local radio promotion? Because I just want to tell you, when I was working in Salinas, Santa Cruz, Monterey, the 110 market, we had this.
Usually it's a small market when you have to list all three cities.
Oh, it's a small market. I lived in Carmel, but the station was in Salinas. But there was some like charity event where it was out at the shopping mall in the parking lot. They set up a dunk tank. Okay. And I was the sportscaster, the local sportscaster was going to have, you could throw the baseball and he will go into the dunk tank. And this is for charity. And it was on the radio and they advertised it. And I lived in Carmel and there was this place called, it's still there. I want to say Fifth Avenue Deli, great sandwiches. And I knew the owner, the husband and wife, and the wife and her daughter, both beautiful people, beautiful women. Not that we notice that anymore, but they said, we're coming out. It's over at the mall, right? It's over. Yeah, we're coming out to throw the baseball at you. This is exciting. I heard about it on the radio. Hey, Malbs, they were the only two people to show up.
Well, that's every car dealership I've ever done a remote for. But you take the $250 and go quietly,
local, these local things sometimes are embarrassing, right?
It's still embarrassing. I'll tell you that. There's nothing has changed about it. Thankfully, COVID hit and we don't do as many as as we used to. But yeah, radio, as envious as I was of you, and not that envious, but I was just like,
were you proud of me?
I was so proud of you. And that's what I want to
We haven't
get
talked
at.
about this. Let's capture this on camera.
So you have to understand that Craig and I, he's got a very boring brother named Chris, and we would crack each other up. And Chris,
Spock, his hero was Spock. His hero was Spock.
His hero was Spock, and he basically think of Spock when you think of Craig's brother. Right. And I love you, Chris. If you're watching or listening or whatever, I miss you and hope we can catch up. But it was so fun because the two of you are so close,
right?
So
very
close,
yes.
But so different, and
right.
and like I said, the dichotomy, the difference, and to get the laugh out of Craig and Chris found the humor. He really did find the humor, but I think he thought he was just hanging out with a couple of mental patients. I mean, just couple of just off like these. I am worried for these two.
Right,
and
right,
what is ever going to happen to them? And and so it was always when I went over to Craig and Chris and I were same age, so Craig's 2 years younger, 3 grades, but 2 years younger.
Right.
And it was always, we would just be dying laughing. And
yes.
Craig or Chris would be laughing. I don't know why he knew. I don't know if he knew why he should be laughing as much, but I think he was laughing at us laughing so hard at all the dumb stuff that we did.
Okay, I got two stories. You just reminded me. These are Chris stories. One is I went to, so he graduated and I was a sophomore. That's the sophomore. Right. We were at the high school then because 9th grade we were in the junior high. So sophomore, junior, senior year, I come into school and I've been there for a month or so. And this girl comes up and says, "You're different than your brother. You actually talk to us. We like you." Okay, that's one. Number two, 8th grade, first day of social studies at Bob Craftsman. Bob Craftsman.
We used to imitate Bob Craftsman, who was also ran the outdoor pool.
Hitler was cruel. He didn't like people. So I can't remember how I used to do it. Well, I don't remember the Bob Craftsman. I don't remember how we did it. But first day in Bob Craftsman's class, we had to go around and introduce ourselves, all the students. And then it was my turn. And Mr. Craftsman goes, "This is Craig Kilborn. His brother, Chris, was the best student I've ever had." And some girl in the class goes, "What happened to you, Craig? What happened to you?"
Well, and I lived under the shadow of my brother, Dave, who was an Eagle Scout, president of the senior class. He was 8.5, 9 grades older. So you and I both kind of lived in the shadow, maybe a little bit of but you had athletic, you were a great, and don't sell yourself short because Craig was and there wasn't enough competition in town. And I know you left, like you had to go up into the cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul to play.
Was Hastings 12,000 when we grew up? Wasn't it?
About 10, actually.
10,000.
Yeah, it was a little less than that, but about 10.
So just to let the people know, it's 10,000. It's nestled on the Mississippi, but it's a suburb of St. Paul. We're 20 minutes from St. Paul, I think 40 minutes from Minneapolis. So we're a suburb of the Twin Cities, but it's a small town.
It's still a farming town. It absolutely had a little both. My dad worked in the cities, which nobody drove into the cities. Your dad worked in St. Paul.
Yep.
Right. And my dad drove into Minneapolis, where he taught at the university. But most fathers at the time did not drive into the cities to work.
Yeah. Two quick factoids, if I can remember these. One, so Hastings on the milk carton was the picture of the world famous Spiral Bridge. Right. Okay. Before we lived there in the 50s, I think there was a spiral bridge that curled around and went over the Mississippi. And it was one of two spiral bridges, they said, in the entire world.
You were coming off a bluff, and the engineers at the time could not figure out how to get the arc
Oh.
down. So the only way they could do it was to gradually
Ah.
bring you down to river level
Right.
or basically ground level, because you're going from here to here. And the only way to do that was to span the river. And then at the end of town, you twirled around. You've been back, you've seen, now there's been a bridge in between that, and
Yep.
now we've got
Yeah.
a 4-lane. We actually have a 4-lane bridge now.
You sound like an engineer yourself there, young man. I mean, you're describing the whole thing. What was the other interesting factoid I was going to say? I can't remember what you were. Hastings, nestled on the Mississippi. They had the Leduc Mansion. I thought there
Right.
was one other interesting. Oh, I know what it was. Your brother, Dave, I think was a better swimmer than you, right?
Yes, I would grant him that.
And didn't he swim at University of Minnesota or Duluth?
He did.
Which
He
one?
swam at Minnesota. I swam at Minnesota as well. But Dave, so my brother, and I think I know where you're going with this. My brother before Bruce Jenner won the Olympic gold in the decathlon, General Mills is it's my claim to fame. My brother was on the Wheaties box.
Unbelievable.
And he was
Unbelievable. From Hastings, Minnesota,
Yeah.
nationally on the cover of the Wheaties box as a swimmer.
was
And
a big deal.
It wasn't necessarily Dave Malbin. It was just a swimmer. Is that right? They wanted a good-looking guy, or what was it?
Yeah. Okay. So General Mills is in Golden Valley, based out of Golden Valley, Minnesota, and they used to put tennis players. They used to put golfers. I believe they had golfers, track and field before Bruce Jenner. Sorry, hold on. Let me grab my dog. But so this is Cooper, by the way. It's my dog, Cooper.
Hey, Coop.
So my brother was swimming at the university, and they wanted to not put a swimmer on the cover of the Wheaties box before they put a football player, everybody else. But so a photographer came over to Cook Hall at the university where the Gophers swam at the time, and asked the coach, Bob Mawerson, and my brother's a good looking guy, good swimmer.
Yes.
We just want to take some pictures. They did not say anything about the Wheaties box. They just said, we want to take some pictures of a swimmer. And the coach said, Malbin, lane 1, and they just took some pictures, and they had him swim with his head out of the water, which isn't the way you swim, obviously competitively freestyle, but they took some pictures, and sure enough, there he was. His likeness was then, characterized, on the cover of the Wheaties box, and I still have one around here somewhere. I've still got one, but
So he was also in the summer. He was a lifeguard at the outdoor pool.
Yeah.
So I was there once, and they do this thing at the you splash around in the pool. I remember I saw a girl older than me, I think maybe in your grade, Kelly Bush was in the pool swimming.
Yes.
And then they said, okay, it's everybody out of the pool. It's time for the lifeguard swim. It's called the lifeguard swim. And it's a little break. So the lifeguard doesn't have to sit there all day. And I don't know if this was it wasn't an Olympic sized pool, was it?
It was 40 yards by about 15 yards. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is my memory. I don't know if this is right because I was in elementary school or junior high or something. Your brother gets in, goes under the water, and swims underwater all the way down to one end, does a flip turn underwater still, and goes all the way back. He goes the length up and down of the pool underwater. Is that possible? We were like, what is going on here? How does this guy holding his breath?
It's possible, not probable for my brother. I mean, he was not that
Maybe
great
he just went
swimmer,
one length. Maybe he went one length.
Probably one length, but he did he swam against Mark Spitz back in the day. And if anybody remembers, before Michael Phelps, he was a 7-time gold medalist.
You were obsessed with one guy. Do you remember?
John Neighbor.
Correct.
John Neighbor was a swimmer.
You love John Neighbor.
I love John Neighbor. He was a backstroker. I was a distance freestyler, but John also was a distance freestyler. But back then, our childhoods were all so dependent upon not so much newspaper, but magazines, the broadcast channels we could get, and radio, and that was basically it. We really had to make up so much of our. We had to really use our imagination. It was really before video games, and so when we got together, if you guys weren't playing basketball, if we were just hanging out, we would be playing radio. We
were very
we'd
creative.
be pretending we'd have to be pretending to be these people.
We were creative, and I remember my parents told me a story, and I think I remember it. I know they told it to me a lot, but I don't know how much I remember it. But it was basically, don't complain and don't say you're bored. And the parable was they put one boy in a room with a bunch of toys, and they put one boy in a room with bunch of manure. They come back an hour later, and the little kid with the toys is crying because the batteries are broken and he doesn't know what toy to play with. And the manure kid is flipping it around, throwing the manure all. This is great. Where's the pony? Where's the pony? That they were I think the point was just enjoy what you have, be grateful, and be creative. Yeah. I think it was something to that effect.
Is this the life lesson that the viewer or the listener is supposed to learn, Craig? Because up front, at the beginning of the podcast, you said you're going to learn something about life if you listen.
I think there was a great documentary on John Wooden, and there was a narrated by Liev Schreiber. It was on HBO, and he comes out from Indiana, from Purdue, to coach out west, and the narrator said he came out with the 3 lessons from his father, or three some kind of instructions. Drink deeply from good books. Don't complain, and make each day your masterpiece. Or something like that. It was this advice
to live up to, but
fatherly advice. But I like the don't complain a lot. I really like that. I wanted to ask you a couple more Hastings questions. Do you remember? Okay, what did you have a favorite place to eat when you were like in junior high or high school?
Well, we would go, Schmitty and I would go to Mr. C's Pizza after swim meets, and it's now a wonderful Mexican place just south of the Applebee's on Highway 61. And if you're, my wife has been, I have not been to the Mexican restaurant. My wife has been, who's not from Hastings, but Mr. C's was just south of town. Spiral Pizza.
That's the one. So Spiral Pizza is named after the Spiral Bridge. It's still there, by the way.
Blessed. Yes. What? Yes, Spiral Pizza is still there.
Thin crust.
Yes, and wonderful. Hastings, Minnesota, which is just south of St. Paul on Highway 61. It's a beautiful drive all the way down to Red Wing along the river. It's
Red Wing shoes.
Correct.
There was. Do you remember Heidi High Pop? You don't remember Heidi High Pop?
I don't.
Was that? That's Highway 55. Is that Highway 55?
Yes.
Okay. It was up there. My neighbor Bob Lenz owned it for a while. These were soda pops, and I would work there with the tiny little forklift where I would move the cases of pop, and we would get, I like cream soda at the time for some reason, but we'd get pineapple and orange soda and grape soda, and my dad would, say, put an ice cream in it, make an ice cream float. So we'd go there. There was a place.
Was the Red Owl open?
The Red Owl was a market, correct?
Yes, it was, and they had brimful pop, and so it was 5 cents a can. So we didn't get the what was it? The Heidi High. We drank the brim. We drank brimful.
Heidi High wasn't around forever. I think it was a brief period. Mm-hmm. There was the burger places. A&W root beer was a big deal in Hastings.
Well, it was. That's closed, but M&H.
M&H, is that still there?
So M&H is now basically a consortium of its gas station. It's got the best fried chicken that will in 30 miles in Dakota County. Really? M&H has the best fried chicken. But when we went, it was just a hamburger place that you had to walk into. And it was our first hamburger. It was well before we ever had a McDonald's. And that was we had a KFC and the M&H.
KFC was a big deal. Big. If you got KFC, when mom didn't
Mom
want
and
to
dad
cook.
were getting along.
Yeah.
Everybody was happy.
Yeah, yeah.
And they bring home a bucket.
Yeah, mom, if she didn't want to cook, we'd go get the KFC, because I think it was, I wouldn't eat there now. I mean, they're not a sponsor, but I would not eat there now. I do like fried chicken, but I'm not eating at KFC. But I always think when these establishments start, they're usually a little better than they grow, and the quality goes down. I don't know.
But when you haven't had chicken, Kentucky Fried Chicken was pretty good, but now M&H is the new leader.
Wow.
As far as fried chicken in Hastings.
We should quickly mention the State Fair was a huge deal in our life. The Minnesota State Fair, we thought it was the greatest in the United States. Our state fair
still
is a
is.
Great state fair.
Don't miss it. Don't
miss it. Don't even be late.
Be late. It's dollars.
I don't know that one.
It's dollars to donuts at our state fair. It's the best state fair in our state. Rogers and Hammerstein.
Yes, yes. Very good. We went there. You and I went together too. We went down the Midway. We would be fascinated with the Barkers at the Freak Show. What was they also had free concerts at the Band Shell, like Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Yes, they still do. It's called the Liney's Lounge now, Line and Kugel's Beer. So it's called Liney's Lounge. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure I think it's the old Band Shell. I could be wrong, but the State Fair is huge, and it's the biggest. It really is the biggest state fair next to the Texas State Fair, but it runs for a shorter amount of time. Gets national acts. It runs 2 weekends in the week in between. But and your birthday and my birthday are only 4 days apart.
August 24th, August 29th. 28th.
Yes, thank you for remembering. And so your dad or my dad would take us up. We would go to the fair, and we would always go together because that was kind of a birthday. That was always part of our birthday.
I remember the memories I have are the Dairy Building. They had a Dairy Queen. They had a dairy.
Shakes.
But what was the woman? They would carve her out of
the butter. The Princess K of the Milky Way. Still a thing. Right.
But the shakes there were tremendous.
Oh. And they're still as good. And they were $1 maybe back when we went.
Yeah.
But, and then your brother and I would go but our parents would take us. And then we would just run off, and they would go,
they would go to the beer gardens, I think.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
But we would walk around. The weird thing was I remember getting tired walking around, and I marveled at my parents. They could walk forever. I could play basketball all day, but I couldn't walk around forever. I'd get tired. But you had Tom Thumb donuts. You had the cheese curds, which is fried cheese. And now they've added so many things. They have pork chop on a stick, which I hear is really good. They have so many things.
Craig, it's an 8 or 9 year waiting list to get your food into the Minnesota State Fair. It's that big. It's insane how long it takes to get your food into the fair.
Couple quick questions on food, then we're going to wrap up with the Life Gorgeous quiz and we have to do your top 5 movies, because you're a first time guest. Do you remember, did you eat a lot of bratwurst growing up?
Not as much. We weren't German.
What is Malbin, by the way?
It's Welsh, which is a very wealthy part of the United Kingdom, or was. It's my parents. Well, the interesting story about that is that in Wales, it was a big coal mining area, and my dad, because of the GI Bill, was in World War II. Your dad was a little younger. Was he in Korea? Was he? He
was in the army, but he wasn't in one of the wars. Deployed. He was down in Fort Benton, Texas, or somewhere.
Yeah.
He was a sharpshooter.
Wow.
And he would teach people how to shoot. And one guy shot before my dad had put on his earplugs, and he lost a little bit of hearing in one of the ears for the rest of his life. But that's okay. Yeah, he's okay. My dad
was in World War II and in China. But his father, my grandfather, who I never met, was a coal miner and had immigrated over. And this is, for the grace of God, go I kind of a thing. It's actually kind of a cool story and why I get to do and you get to why we get to do the things we do is my dad's father was a coal miner, and my dad was 6'3" and went and worked in the coal mine one day, but couldn't stand up in the coal mine. And because of his height, he said, I can't, couldn't stand up. And so he went on to get a college education, the first ever in his family. And then, here I get to sit and play radio and talk to you and hold my dog up on a podcast 50 years later.
We had bratwurst and boiled in beer. We were English on both sides of our family.
Yeah,
but my dad really liked to cook, and he would also take me up. I would, like I was in 8th grade. We're going to go to the boys basketball tournament at St. Paul Civic Center, and he drove me up there, and he says, "Hey, you ever had a White Castle? Let's go get a White Castle." I had never had a White Castle burger. Or he'd say, "Let's go get a Coney Island. You ever have a Coney Island?" And we go to the Coney Island place, and he says, "Watch how they do it. Raw onions, mustard, salt. That's how you do it. And there's no ketchup. It's a Coney Island." So he would do that. And then there was a guy across.
Craig, I want you to hold on, because I've got a surprise for you.
Okay.
Downstairs in our bar down here, my wife loves White Castle, and I'll tell you how. Just stay with me. I'll be back in 2 seconds.
And we'll be right back. We're taking a quick break. Let's see what we have here. I'm just checking my messages.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
See this?
Oh, that is that in the freezer? You can get those in the freezer, right?
It's in our freezer. She loves to heat these things up. She stays in great shape, but she can put these things away. She's got the metabolism of
a hummingbird. But so those are great, aren't they? Now, where do you get those at? Where do you get those?
The store, the grocery store. When's the last time you go to now, do you have somebody that shops for you?
No, I have to shop. I have to pick it out myself. I need to do that. Yeah. We have Whole Foods, Trader Joe's. We have some other ones out here. And I love to cook. One more food question. You ever heard of booyah stew? Booyah? Yes.
So in Hastings, the firemen would put on the annual booyah in Riverside Park, and it's a hodgepodge. It's just a big stew.
Pork, beans, and you put cans of corn in there, and you cook it outside in a big black kettle.
It's like when we were, it was probably not appropriate to say, but Wapatui, when we were in high school, where you go out into the cornfields and they just have a big garbage can and they just dump a bunch of Everclear and cherry.
I don't know that stuff. I don't know that. I was clean cut. I took my basketball seriously. Okay. Hey, one other note before we go. Were you married to Eleanor Mondale or dated her? What was the story of that?
I was married to Eleanor. Yes.
Yes. She was a beautiful woman, Walter Mondale's daughter, and she tragically passed away early. What age did she pass away?
I think we were married in 1991. She passed away in somewhere around 2010 or 2011, maybe.
And how long were you guys married?
About 5 minutes. About just a few months. We were together from basically our first date, and lived together in Minnesota. Moved to Chicago, and it dissolved rapidly. Rapidly there. But her parents who they both passed. Right. But they were wonderful, great to be with, and they were really, really wonderful to me.
Cool.
Both. Yeah, her whole family.
It is time, ladies and gentlemen, for the Life Gorgeous quiz. Simple question.
Is this like the Fast Five?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be rapid fire. It's not 5 questions, which I haven't brought back yet. It's a little different, but it's Life Gorgeous quiz. Simple questions, profound insights. Who's your favorite Minnesota Viking?
Oh, wow.
All time.
Fran Tarkington. Fran Tarkington. Yeah, I go way back. The 4 Super Bowls, we just lost Bud Grant.
Yes.
And I probably should say Bud Grant, because he epitomizes Minnesotans.
Sure.
Kind of cool. But Fran Tarkington.
So I wasn't the biggest Fran Tarkenton fan. I thought he was a little crazy scrambling. And I remember when it would be third down and 10 and he'd scramble and get sacked. And my dad would hit the side chair. He goes, damn it, now we're out of field goal range. Because he would scramble and get sacked.
I'm just proud that your dad didn't stay a Chief fan or a
he's a Giants fan. New York Giants. That's his team. That's his team. He would always say about the Vikings, don't let them sucker you in. Because they always had talent. Because they always have talent.
Oh, it's still true.
But I liked Chuck Foreman. I liked a receiver called Anthony Carter, not Chris Carter. I liked Chris Carter, but Anthony Carter. And then I liked
Anthony Carter was University of Michigan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Number one, he returned punts, and he was also a great tiny guy, skinny guy, really fast, very elusive. And I liked Stephon Diggs while he was there. Now I like, obviously, Justin Jefferson, and I like the hitman, Harrison Smith. Okay, so yours is Fran the Man. I think people will find this interesting. I find this whole thing interesting. I hope the fans enjoy me talking to my childhood friend, Greg Malbin, a.k.a. Greg Thunder. How old were you when we all learned this? How old were you when you learned how to spell Mississippi and then quickly spell Mississippi? We learned it when we were in elementary school, right?
Yeah, MISSISSIPPPI. It's because of so
we'd say it like that. We'd always MISSI.
You still do.
Yeah,
you still do.
We were two S's.
I just learned to spell Albuquerque just a couple of weeks ago, which I'm pretty happy about. 9? Yeah. 9, maybe 8, 9 years old.
Somewhere like I just know grades. Something like second, third, or fourth grade. We used to do that. Next question. As a radio guy, do you care about Howard Stern? Do you have an opinion on him?
I love Howard. He's brilliant. He is softened. He's an amazing interviewer. I don't get a chance to listen to him that much, but he's hilarious and yet very thought provoking. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
I was wondering if you would be. So I wasn't a big fan of his. I had friends that obviously were. I thought he was obviously too profane and too silly with some of the questions.
That's the cover. That's the cover, but that's not what's inside.
But he's, very gifted and is a great interviewer. And my question to him would be, and I was on his show twice, by the way, but I would say, how far would you have gotten if you didn't do the shock stuff and the profane, the dirty stuff, or making fun of the mentally handicapped and all this kind of stuff? Because you have talent, but did you need to be the shock jock? But obviously it worked out very well for him. Okay.
His Bruce Springsteen interview is amazing. If you have not seen it, it's on HBO.
Did you do your top 5 movies of all time? It's time.
I have not. Okay,
I did tell you to do it. So
you told me to do it, and it's hard. Yeah, and I'm not good at preparing, but I don't know if we got time for all 5. But I got to go. I mean, Star Wars. I was 15. I still remember. If you remember where you were when you saw it, like if you remember the experience, like Schindler's List, when nobody got up at the end of the when the credits rolled, nobody got up. Nobody dared to get up and to leave, and they would keep the lights down. I remember Schindler's List, and not just because of that, but Star Wars. I love, I love Sideways. I think that's
one of my favorites.
Yeah,
I have it. I have it as a 5th. I rotate my 5th, but I have that currently as my 5th. I don't know if it's actually a top 5 movie, but
Thomas Hayden Church, of the few people I've interviewed, he happened to come in and he was great, just really wonderful, really wonderful and exuberant and full of life, and I just remember him being terrific. Swingers is a great movie. Life of Pi. I know I go way back. Risky Business. The whole end of the movie where the egg is cracked and the innocence is lost. Breaking Away. Right. One-on-one.
Oh, tell the story. Okay. So Spike Lee calls it the worst basketball movie ever. I disagree. It's Henry Steele, played by Robbie Benson. He's a college basketball player, and the coach doesn't like him, and he plays well at the end. I think he takes some uppers, takes some reds, some pills. And then the coach says, "You just got a scholarship." And it calls him in the office. "You got a scholarship." And he goes, "Coach, I can play anywhere I want. Up yours with a red hot poker." Remember that?
Vaguely. What I remember is, and you and I went to go see the movie at the Corral Drive-In in West St. Paul. We did not, it was not showing at the, and the drive-ins were all over the place, but we had to drive about 20 miles. Went to the Corral. And I think it was a triple feature, and it was probably the second movie. And I remember, and when Robbie starts hitting is it 3-point? It's just two. Is it 2-pointers?
Back then,
it's just two. Back then, it's just two, right?
Yeah.
And I drove that night, and I don't even know if you had your license at the time. But what year did it come out?
I was a passenger. I want to say you were. I want to say 77 or 78.
Yeah. So you would not maybe have had your. No. I drove. I drove
man.
The Buick Century, and your mom did it. It wasn't a Country Squire. What was it? It was a station wagon.
Kingswood Estate.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful. With the paneling.
I don't know. I think we saved money by not having paneling.
The paneling. We saved money by not having the air conditioning. So Robbie's hitting the twos, and it's like 7 in a row. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And the movie's ramping up, and I'm hitting the horn after every shot.
Every time Robbie Benson scores a basket at the drive-in, Greg is hitting the horn,
and
everyone starts going crazy. It's euphoria. All these cars in the drive-in,
I'm flashing the lights on and hitting the brights too. So I'm flashing. I got a lot going on.
There was another one. I don't think you remember this. What was our local theater drive-in right there in
Valley View?
Valley View.
Yeah.
I think it was you, me, and Chris, but we went to see a movie, and I don't know what what's that?
Was it Rollerball?
You have a better memory than I do with this stuff, but I just remember you wanted to hide in the trunk and you didn't want to pay to go in. And I was like, this is fun. So we did that. You hid in the trunk, and then we parked, and then you got out.
In. I think it was my car.
Okay.
And then I got out, and I got in the trunk because neither one of you, Chris is too scared to do it. And you were just laughing.
Right.
And so you weren't taking it seriously. And I said, well, so, and I knew Chris had no poker face. So I think you got behind the wheel, and Chris rode then shotgun. And I got in the back of the trunk, but we were too afraid to latch it because we didn't
breathe. We wanted you to breathe.
Yes, right. We didn't, because we hadn't done a dry run on it.
We weren't practicing being, doing corrupt things like this. We weren't practicing these things. But this is my favorite part. After the movie, we're driving off, and
you let me out.
What?
You let me out of the trunk.
Yes, you watched the movie, and then the movie was done. And then you got back in the car, and we just drove off, and you rolled down your window and said, "Hey, I didn't pay. Hey, I didn't pay." Ha! Something like, does that ring a bell or not?
Yeah, vaguely, yes. And I probably honked then too.
Yeah.
Probably.
That was fun.
Their attention.
That was so much fun.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. Innocent fun.
We can always go back and try to find somebody and pay for it. Just feel good about ourselves.
Yeah, it's closed. It's a Walmart now. It really is. It's a Walmart. Yeah.
Hey, this was fun. We got to do this again. I really appreciate you taking the time. And we went down. I hope the people at home enjoyed listening to Memory Lane for us back in Hastings, Minnesota.
Well, I just want to say this, Craig, and I didn't get I don't know if I articulated it well. I may not now, but I'm just so proud. I'm so proud of you. And I didn't get a chance to stay up because I was getting up to do a morning show. So I missed a lot of sports centers. I missed a lot of your late night stuff because I was sleeping and having to get up so early. But I'm just not only, happy that you had me on, but also so proud of you and just the way you handle yourself. And when I did watch, I would see the humor and go, I know where that comes from, and and always enjoyed it. And it was always fun to see that where it sort of germinated from or have an understanding of it. But just so thrilled for you and all your success. And when I say was envious, I yes, but also just so proud and just so happy for you. And please give your brother my best.
Thank you, sir. That was very nice of you to say that. I appreciate it. We'll have you on again. Well, maybe I'll have you, Chris,
love it.
and myself.
Would love it.
I'll interview you and Chris. And
Chris
have you
will
guys-
probably straighten this out on a few things.
That's funny. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Craig.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. I want to thank my guest, Greg Malbin, a.k.a. Greg Thunder, my childhood friend from Hastings, Minnesota. We'll see you next time. And remember, young people, I'm proud of you.